to start with a overview of these programs that we're going to be discussing. I think some folks have some knowledge of them, and we're going to use them kind of frequently today, but I think some context as to exactly what they are will be helpful. So there are really three, it's maybe 2.5 or 3 programs that fall under RRCA Elite Support. And the first that I want to talk about is Run Pro Camp, which was founded in 2011. So coming up on the 10th anniversary of the first Run Pro Camp. It's really a 2-day orientation camp for up to about 20 recent college graduates who have shown really great promise in running. And it provides attendees with tools and training and resources to pursue a professional career in the sport. The topics that get covered include the ins and outs of sponsorships, different types of agent representation, working with elite recruiters for events, and even individual financial management for new runners. If you've ever heard of an orientation camp for rookies in the NFL or NBA, Run Pro Camp really tries to provide something similar for professional running. It's also free for all accepted athletes, so we cover travel and lodging costs. This is the longest running one. It's the Rhodes Scholars Program, which was founded in 1996 while Don Cardon, who's on this call and you'll hear from later, was president of the RRCA. And Rhodes Scholars provides annual grants of $5,000 apiece to 4 to 6 emerging American elite distance runners, probably a slightly older population than those that attend Run Pro Camp, although there is often sometimes a Run Pro athlete will become an immediate Rhodes Scholar. The program aims to provide needed financial support to promising athletes at a key time in their athletic careers, and really tries to encourage them and provide them with some financial backing to stay in the sport and continue with their development. And the last thing is that there's an Olympic Trials Development Grant, and this is somewhat new, and it's kind of an offshoot of Rhodes Scholars. It's a similar idea, but beginning for the 2016 Olympic Marathon Trials, and then again for the 2020 version, it's provided $2,500 with some additional escalator clauses for past Rhodes Scholars and performance at the trials to 16 runners in each cycle who've qualified for the trials to help them with their training and in preparation for the event. So there's your background information. And with that, what I would like to do is maybe start off by asking our panel to first introduce themselves, maybe say where they're living and who they're training with, and also maybe what they would say is their favorite running accomplishment. So Katy, why don't we start with you since you're at the far first corner on my screen.
Oh, geez. Okay. So I'm Katy Germann. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota. I train with Minnesota Distance Elite. And then our favorite running accomplishment, I think wholeheartedly, it had to have been with Aliphine at the New York City Marathon. We ran most of the race together, and Aliphine and I were college teammates for a brief moment when I joined Iowa State University. And it was just, I haven't run many marathons, but that was the first one where I felt like I had a whole group of girls as teammates and working together to get through it. And it's the New York City Marathon. So it was a really awesome experience to start with. So
awesome. Thank you. Frank, I'll turn to you next.
Hello, everyone. I'm Frank Lara. I live and train in Boulder, Colorado with the Roots Running Project. And my proudest running accomplishment thus far would probably be winning the US 15K championship in 2019? 2020, yeah.
I think we're all in the same place with time at this point, so understandable. Yeah. And that's a good story. We'll get to a little bit more of that later, I think. So, all right, Aliphine, I'll turn to you, and you're a special visitor that you can introduce as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aliphine Tuliamuk. I'm a professional runner for Northern Arizona Elite. And 2020 US Olympic Trial Champion. I guess I jumped something. Okay, this is my little girl Zoe. She's about 3 months old. And my favorite running moment, Katy said, in New York City Marathon, I was coming off a stress fracture, and I only had 8 weeks to train, and then I was able to run with her and one other girl, and it was so much fun because I just wasn't sure if I was going to do well, and because of them, I was able to do really, really well. And of course, I think the icing on the cake would be the 2020 US Olympic Trials where I won. So Oh, and I live and train in Flagstaff, Arizona.
Awesome, thank you. So Frank, maybe I'll start with you on this one, but I'd like all of you a little bit to maybe talk about if there was, prior to the accomplishment that you'd shared as your favorite, if there was a moment where maybe you realized for the first time that you were able to do this at a high level, maybe not necessarily a pro career, but something close to that was something you had the talent to really do something special in running.
I think the moment I realized that I was made the right choice in like continuing my career was during the Houston half marathon in January 2020. It was with so many guys running so fast. And I remember looking up with like 2 miles to go, looking around and seeing 2 of my teammates that I'd been training with, plus like 15 other guys, thinking like, wow, we're all about to run like 62. We're going to break 62. And I was just like, I can't believe there's this many people here. And it was just kind of overwhelming and thinking like, I'm doing this. I'm doing this right. And I think I'm going to stay on this. Cause I mean, prior to that race, I had a few races where I was kind of like dealing with some like side cramp issues mid races and would like have to like walk. And that's something like you don't expect to hear from a professional or someone who's aspiring to be a professional athlete to like struggle with that. But like my main goal going into Houston was not have to walk, finish the race without walking, and you'll be in a good place. And after I accomplished that, it was like, yeah, as long as I do that, things will go well. But that's kind of the big moment where I realized that.
But, you know, I will say, I don't want to speak for everybody on the call, but hearing that professional athletes worry about side cramping and having to walk during long distances is a bit reassuring in a sense. So thank you. Katy, same question to you. Was there a moment, and I would say you could even think earlier too, if that, you know, it doesn't have to be from necessarily a professional career, but at any point when you were running that you sort of realized you had the talent and perhaps ability to pursue this?
It's a good question. I don't know if I have a specific time. I feel like there was little nuggets along the way that like I wanted to keep pursuing it, but I didn't want to put the pressure on myself either. That there are so many things that happen, like injuries and who knows what else, that like I knew that I could easily be diverted from being a professional runner, but I think I had the goal pretty young. So my oldest brother is 10 years older than me, and actually he joined Hanson Brooks, which is a professional running team, but he was also a Rhodes Scholar. So I kind of watched him go throughout the whole professional career, and it was something that I've had always wanted to do. And I remember being fairly young and watching the Olympic trials marathon and you know, just seeing the women running and wanting to be there myself. So I don't know, it's just really small things, and then the little successes along the way. And I think by my senior year of college, or my 5th year, like becoming an All-American several times, and then a Big 12 champion on the track twice, kind of helped solidify it. So there's just a lot of little things. And then of course, I think the Run Pro Camp really helped in the fact that like I'm there with other like-minded individuals, and it was 2 days of just this like infiltration of what it's like to be a professional runner. And I think like within those days of like getting a bigger picture and being like, yes, like this is worth it. Like I do want to do this. Like I know to be a runner, you kind of you don't make as much money initially, you know, you're kind of foregoing more of a standard career. So that was probably the moment where I was like, you know what, I'll just give it up, let it, you know, this seems like really something I'd like to do and pursue. And if it sets me back financially a few years, like that's okay.
It's interesting, you know, I think another sort of outside observation, but we think that often there's one crystallizing moment. And I think the way that RRCA elite support works, and having worked with a lot of elite athletes, is that it's really a building blocks, that there's, you know, as you mentioned, a lot of little nuggets along the way. And I think that that's sort of a good metaphor for how a pro career develops in a sense too. So, all right, Aliphine, I'll ask you the same question. Was there a moment for you growing up, or even, you know, as you were becoming more competitive, where you recognized that you had the ability to make a go of this as a professional runner?
Yeah, I think I thought when I was a really young girl, I thought that I had a future in professional running, especially growing up in Kenya where a lot of people pursued running and they became really successful. And when they came, abroad and ran and they came back and they were driving, like all of a sudden they were driving nice cars or they were building nice houses. And I grew up in a small village and my parents didn't have any jobs. I mean, they did have land, they had animals, but they didn't have they weren't like formally employed. And so I thought I wanted to do something like that. But it took a very long time. It took so many trials and errors to actually get where I am. I think even like a few years ago, like there were times where I wanted to quit, because like Katie said, you don't make a lot of money in the beginning. There were times where I couldn't pay my rent. Like after college, I really thought I was gonna land a really good contract. Well, I had a reality check because I came out of college. Nobody cared about giving me a contract, even though I was like a 14-time All-American and I had been a runner-up a couple of times. But I think being a runner-up just was shadowed by a lot of people who won. And so I remember like thinking, well, maybe I'll win a lot of races. And I didn't win a lot of races. And there were a couple of times that I wanted to quit. But when you're passionate about something, you just continue coming back. And it wasn't until 2016 that I actually started making enough money to think, well, I could live off of this. But by then I had already like gotten a job, and I was working part-time and it was going well. And honestly, I think it's until last year that I really think that, okay, well, I mean, I just met the Olympic team. I'm definitely meant for this. But I've been running for like 20 years now, and so many, times along the way, I thought, I don't think I'm meant for this. And actually, in fact, a couple of years ago, when I was injured, 2019, I remember thinking, well, if I don't run a good marathon, then I'm just gonna probably quit running and maybe go to school and get a job and just do something else. But then I went to Europe and I ran a really good marathon. And after that, it was the race that I went. After that, I went to New York City Marathon, and it was just like, wow, things could change, but it takes a really long time. And for somebody who is starting, I mean, it could be really challenging. But so yeah, I knew when I was a little girl for sure that I wanted to be a pro athlete, but I just didn't know what it took to be there, to get there.
Thank you. So both you and Katie and Frank, to a certain extent, hit on in that answer the initial struggles that come with professional and financial as well. When you look at the amount, a Rhodes Scholar grant is $5,000, and that for certain people in certain professions or in certain professional places, that doesn't seem like a tremendous amount of money. But can you each maybe share a little bit about, you've all received around that amount from the RRCA at slightly different points in your careers, but what that means to a runner, what that allows you to do, what that changes about where your life are. And Aliphine, I'll start with you, since you sort of built that into your last answer.
Yeah, I think when you receive that grant, it makes you realize that people believe in you, and it goes a long way. Like we said, like you could get injured, that money could go towards getting rehab, and rehabbing can be very expensive, even when you're making, say, I mean, a lot of people are probably making, like $20,000-$30,000, and having extra $5,000 helps a lot, goes a long way to just take care of yourself and take care of your rehab, or even like buying good food. It goes a long way. And it also, like I said, makes you feel like people believe in me. Like if somebody can see that I deserve this grant, then therefore I deserve to be a pro athlete, and there's more that I can still achieve.
So Aliphine, I actually found your application for the Olympic Trials grant, which you received in the fall of 2019. And it says, I have dealt with injuries and this is the time to prevent them, and this money would go towards that. I will use it for weekly massages, chiropractic work, groceries, and physiotherapy. So seeing that, you're involved with a team, you're in a pretty good place as a runner. So you won a lot of events that you mentioned. Those are pretty basic things. It's always surprising to me to read that those are what professional runners, is that what they was that what the money was used for in your training for Atlanta? Is that kind of what you did in the run up to it?
Absolutely, because I was injured a lot these last 3 years, and heading up to Atlanta, I had a stress fracture. I had to do MRIs, I had to do my chiropractic appointments, and it can get expensive really quickly. And also you have to understand that as a professional athlete, you're an independent contractor. A lot of times you don't have a health insurance. And so you pay everything out of pocket, and every little helps. And it definitely went to that. It was nice to know that I had, this chunk of cash that I could just dedicate to, like my massages and, my weekly massages or chiropractic appointment. It definitely helps a lot. Because again, you never know when you're going to get injured, like, you never know when a pandemic is going to hit. For example, we come from 2020 trials and you think, well, I have a few races lined up. I have, like a little bit of appearance lined up, and then things go south or you get injured, and it's like it's the money that you have right now that is the money that you're gonna have, because you never know what's gonna happen. You could run tomorrow and sprain your ankle, and you're not able to run for a whole year. It definitely helps.
So Frank, I actually kind of want to pose the same question to you, because you received a grant a little earlier in your career than Aliphine got the Olympic trials grant after she'd been out of school for a while, and you got it, I think your first fall after graduation. Similar situation for you? I mean, same needs. What did $5,000 do for you at that point in your career?
It came at a very, very opportune time. I was kind of like between jobs, looking for work that would be like conducive with training. Because like if I want to run, I want to be all into that. So it was like I was very picky about like the jobs I applied for and looked for, and basically the support was very much needed. And honestly, it was there's no shortage of like people out there that were like helping me through this, like the first few months, from like my family to like my girlfriend. And like right before I even moved out to Boulder, I had like towards the end of my fifth year at Furman, I like started doing Ubering, and it was just like I only made like enough money to like basically make the trip to Colorado. And it was like, oh, now what do I do? So I was so grateful when I got it, because I was like, okay, I don't know what I would have done without this, but it's really, like as Aliphine said, like somebody out there believes in me, in addition to all of the support system that I like have from like all of my family and friends and stuff. So it came at a very opportune time. And honestly, I think I would have been very challenged to pay off like a little bit of debt going if I hadn't received that. So it definitely let me go into the rest of the year training, thinking like not worrying about having to like pay off things, but just like moving forward and looking at what's ahead, and not like worrying about like having to like budget money for like trips, or like to like see if I can go to a specific race, if I can like actually even like pay off to like make it there. Like going into the race thinking like, how much money do I need to make off of this race to like pay off like the trip that I just made to come out here. So it was, when you go into races not having to worry about the financial side of things, it's a whole different mentality, because you can just focus on like doing what you love and not worrying about like what you're going to make.
That's awesome. That's a wonderful context to how much a difference the amount of money can make for your race. Katy, you received a grant kind of where Frank was, and then you've not been in the sport quite as long as Aliphine, but did your needs change? Was there something that when you got a Rhodes Scholar grant shortly after graduation versus the Olympic trials grant later, same kind of things? Like maybe share a little bit about.
Yeah, no, I'd say some different things. I was probably a little more desperate right out of college, because I hadn't technically graduated yet when I got it. So I still had to student teach. So I was student teaching and living with family, and just with that, like I didn't have a lot of financial support from anyone, so I'm on my own. And so like groceries were like a really stressful thing, and I was working on the weekends too. So I'm working 7 days a week for for a couple months. And so receiving that was like more of the relief that like, okay, I can take a day off on Sunday and like not work 7 days a week, because that's not conducive to training either. I mean, at all. Like, and so that was really like a blessing to be able to have that, to be able to focus on the running. So initially it was a little bit more like, I need groceries. Like, this is desperate matters here. And I guess at that same time, it was needing that emotional support as well, that someone who isn't related to me or a friend it's like unbiasedly like, hey, we believe in you. That was worth a lot for me initially. I mean, it still is worth a lot, but at that time it was very valuable. And then for the Olympic Trials grant, development grant, this past, oh my gosh, this past year, leading up to the 2020 trials, that grant allowed me to, since I'm training in Minnesota, it allowed me to step away from school where I'm a part-time teacher for the month or 2 months and go south for training, so that I could focus on the best training for myself. Because when it's icy and snowy and -30, like there's so many variables that can happen. And I was like, that would be such a shame if I was just on an easy run and I slip and fall. And then that's, I didn't even get a chance because I didn't put myself in the right position for that. So that's what I did with the second one, was to relocate, focus on like the trials coming up. And then, yeah, like kind of Aliphine said, is like and Frank, with the being able to go see a chiropractor and just take care of myself a little extra during that time.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so I slightly different, but it's also very moving to hear that the support, in addition to the financial component, really the boost of confidence that comes with an unbiased party providing it is helpful. So kind of going back to run, and Katy, I can start with you here since you came to Run Pro Camp. What did you know about turning professional when you graduate? So you graduate from college after a pretty distinguished career. Did you have any guidance on what professional running looked like, or what did you know about it when you graduated?
Well, I thought I would, with my brother being a professional runner. I think he even helped name the camp, but I didn't. I didn't know things. Like, I didn't understand, like, how do you contact a race to run it, or how do you find an agent? Like, when do you need an agent? I didn't know about taxes, like on your race income. Yeah, so it kind of gave me a broader scope of like how to represent yourself, like on social media as well. Yeah, I think it just like opened my eyes, because in your mind you kind of think of what it could be, right? That it's so easy and that you make money right off the bat. You have a sponsorship right away. Like every race lets you in and gives you appearance fees, but that's not true, right? Like you don't make much money at all. And I mean, eventually you can, but and then also like not every race will let you in, and like you don't get appearance fees at most races, and like there's just a lot that I think I gathered. I think it was invaluable for me. And then just to meet other athletes that were in the same position and still having continued relationships with those athletes has been really impactful for me.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, I always say that Run Pro will never have as many people in a room invested in the professional success of those there as the athletes will never have as they will at Run Pro Camp. So glad to know that you felt that was the same way, and that relationships are important. So Frank, same question to you. What did you know about running professionally when you graduated, and maybe how did Run Pro Camp help to inform you?
I knew a lot of professional, or like people who like wanted to be professional athletes, like who had already graduated from college. And in my mind, professional running was, if you run really fast, you will be paid to do it. And at Run Pro Camp, I learned that that's not everything that there is. There's also like getting into races and like all this stuff. And I think the most like valuable lesson I learned at Run Pro Camp was from Aliphine's coach, Ben Rosario, who just like talked about like one of his main points was just like gratitude of like the people that are allowing you to like do it, like race directors and like coaches and like agents and everyone. And it's just like, I didn't realize how much of a team effort it is for like for like me, an individual, to like go out and like perform. It's not just me, it's like the people, whoever like paid to get me there, the like whoever put the race on, who brought all the competition, all the competitions coaches, my coaches, their support squad. It's just like a whole thing. And it's just, I think I learned that prior to the camp, I wouldn't have known how, I wouldn't have been as appreciative of like, just like how much, not just like the people that are supporting me, but how much every single person involved in events are like, how much they're putting into things. And I think I've really come to appreciate how much goes into everything. And I think it gives me a lot more gratitude when I'm in racing, thinking like not letting things, an opportunity to go to waste, because so much effort went into this on so many sides.
Yeah, we have some folks who have presented and attended Run Pro Camp on the call, and I think they can all attest that it's a pretty it's a pretty stark look at what it means to run professionally, and I think it means that those that stick with it really want to do it. And glad you and Katy are both here. Aliphine, I kind of wanted to. You spoke at Run Pro Camp when Frank was there, and sat in on some of it from the perspective of a more experienced runner. What was your takeaways? Were there things that you wish that you'd known coming out of the sport, coming out of college? Was it something? What was your perspective as a more veteran runner, kind of watching this take place?
Yeah, I think coming out of college, I thought, I was very successful in college, and I definitely expected to come out and have, every manager wanting me to run for them, and every company wanting me to like represent them. I kind of wish that I had a Run Pro Camp, and being told that it takes time, to develop in the sport, and it takes time to even start winning races. And I think that when I came to Run Pro, like I tried to tell, the young athletes, like what my experience had been like, just because I knew that I came out of college very naive, even though I thought I was very experienced in college, or even like the financial aspect of it. Like I went to college in Kansas and I moved to New Mexico, and New Mexico was more expensive than Kansas. And I thought, well, I'm a really good runner. I'm just going to go win races, and I'm going to start making money, and I'm going to be able to pay, my rent and my car insurance and all that stuff. That was not the case. I wish I had had someone tell me that, you needed patience and that I needed to budget better. I definitely think that, Frank and Katy, who got to go to Run Pro, I think they were better prepared than I was. I came out and I had an agent, but, just like anything else, chemistry has to work. And for me, it didn't work out. And it took me trying out a couple of agents before I found Howie Management, which worked really, really well with me. And it's like, how do you know, like, when to say no to an agent that you with? Or like, even like sometimes you just say, for example, you go run a race and then you make, say, like $500, and you're really struggling, and then you have to think about paying an agent. It's like, is it important to have an agent now, or is it important to have an agent later? And I think when I was at Run Pro and listening to what everybody was saying, it was just like, I think it was John Ricky, which is who is one of my managers, who was, educating people like, when do you need to find an agent, and when can you represent yourself? I think that's knowledge that it's really important to have, because after a certain point in the sport, race directors won't get you in if you don't have an agent. Like, for example, running races with like New York City Marathon or New York Road Runners, I think once you get to that point, it's like, if you don't have an agent, they almost think, well, there must be something wrong with you. They might not get you in the race. It's like, you can get into the smaller races, but then if you want to go to the big races, you definitely need an agent. And at what point do you need to start to go to big races? Because I think the other thing is, when you come out of college, for example, and you think, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and run New York City Marathon, and then they tell you no. I think in a way it could break your heart, and you could think, well, I guess they don't value me, and you could, leave the sport. Whereas if you started with shorter races and they can see what you're doing, and then it would be important if they came to you, or like eventually if you had a representative that spoke on your behalf to this big race. I think those are things that I wish I had known. But I mean, like, lucky for me though, like I found my my agent that worked with me right away, and I was able to succeed. Like I needed to. But in the beginning, it was definitely challenging, and I really wish that I had run pro. I mean, but then on the other hand, I wasn't an American citizen, so there's no way I could have gone to a run pro camp out of college. Like so that was another like challenge.
So yeah, well, I'm glad you got to experience it and share your own story with some of the campers that year. I know that was really valuable. And you had a group of people in the office that were there that met you and were really excited to cheer you on in Atlanta as well. You talked a little bit earlier, and I'm curious about this, but how you felt like you needed your success at certain races kind of built on themselves, and then you got invited into other races. Can you just share a little bit about that specifically, like what that experience is like as a professional runner for you?
Yeah, because it's like I mean, like for example, when you come out of college and you won a couple NCAA titles, I think a lot of people have seen you already, and they would definitely invite you, to big races. But when you're somebody like me who was a runner-up a couple of times, who had a lot of All-American titles but didn't really have a championship title, it becomes really hard for people because you come out of college and you're just one of the many professional athletes that are out there. And so if you want to have a really good race, I mean, you have to be selective and you have to get those that are experienced. And I think also we are at a time in our sport right now where it's not just you running fast that matters. It's like, what else can you bring to the table? Like, are you good at promoting, things in social media? And I think this happens the same way with like contracts these days. And I think when you get to races, for example, like New York City Marathon, they're very selective, on who they want to be on, their start line. And, they won't just take anybody that, they think, oh, maybe they will do well. And in order for you to get into those races, too, I mean, remember, like they have to pay for your hotel. They have, like they can give you a little bit of appearance. That's how you end up making money, as a professional athlete. Eventually, it's like they pay for your hotel, they pay for your travel, and then they give you a little bit of appearance money because, I mean, going into a race and hoping that you will win or you will make money, it's a gamble, that you don't know that until you actually perform. But like if you can build on smaller races, like for example, when I went to Europe to run a marathon, at the time my marathon PR had been like 2:33, and then I went to Europe and I ran 2:26, and I came back and New York City Marathon was like, hey, you coming to run our race? And that was so cool, like to have them contact my agency, like we want her to run our race because I had finally shown that I could do this. So yeah, I think building on small races is definitely awesome. And then like you were able to give me appearance money, which is awesome because at least like, Frank said, it's so awesome if you can go into a race and not have to worry about how much money do I have to make in order to, be able to pay my debt. If you know that you're gonna make money already from appearance, I think that's a really good thing.
Aliphine, at what point in your career did you realize you were going into races and not worried about having to win prize money to be? Are you there yet? I would hope so, but do you know when that happened for you?
This year. I think that maybe this year.
Really?
Yeah, seriously, because it's like, I mean, I did so well in 2020, but then everything else shut down. Before that, well, let's just say 2018, once I signed with Hoka NSD, because then I had a salary, even though it wasn't very much, but at least I knew that I would be able to pay, like my rent and the basic needs for the whole year. And then, I could go into a race and really fight for, I mean, I still needed to win in order to stay afloat, but at least I knew that I could still pay, like, pay the basic necessities. But I think last year and maybe now going forward is one, like I can go into a race, like, for example, I'm going into the Olympics and I don't have a lot of pressure from the financial standpoint. I just have internal pressure because, I mean, I want to perform. I want to represent myself and represent the people that have been there for me. It's not so much like I need to win this race to make a living. It's more like it almost becomes a status. And of course, there's more money that comes with, winning a race, but it's not the motivation. It's not, I need to make this money to pay, my gas bill or anything like that. So yeah, I think definitely this year and last year, but the years before that, it was still challenging. like we keep talking about, like you can have injuries, like I was injured a lot, and there were races that I won, but then I came out of it, and then I was injured. So then you're out for the rest of like a half a year, and the little money that you won, that's all you have for the rest of the year. So it could still be challenging.
Yeah, and I would invite anyone to go look at Aliphine's resume. She had an impressive number of wins and a long and accomplished resume prior to 2018 or 20, I mean, especially even leading into the trials. So to hear that that was still a concern, even despite lots of success, is somewhat jarring to hear. But that's the reality of being a professional runner, I think. Frank, I kind of want to play on that theme and ask you about your unique experience, where you mentioned winning the 2020 15K USA Championships as being your favorite accomplishment, but you had the unique situation of finding out you won, I guess, 8 or 9 months after the fact, because the person that initially won the race was disqualified for using illicit substances. So I guess I'm curious, do you feel like going from second to first has changed what's available to you? Is that something that is different now? And I guess maybe just comment on what a kind of unique experience that must have been.
Well, so people were very upset when right shortly after the race. Many people flew to my defense, and I didn't really understand why at the time.
This is the Gate River Run in 2020, right? In Jacksonville,
yes.
Florida. Okay, right.
Yeah, because I had went second, and I was super happy about it. Now they ran an awesome race. I was second. It was the first time being in top 10 in a US championship, and it was just super exciting for me. And I didn't really understand why people were upset about. In my mind, I was like, oh well, next time I'll win it for sure. But it was a few, probably like, I got my like test results back from the drug testing like a few weeks later, and I was like, okay, I passed. I haven't heard anything, so I'm officially second, so that's cool. And then several months later, I think it was September 26th was the date that I learned that I had actually won the race. So 6 months following after the race. I can tell you the exact date because it was the day after my birthday, and it was a very exciting weekend. But I honestly think my coach said this, and I agree with him, that I got more notoriety from getting second in that race than I would have for winning it, which is a sad reality of like, if a cheater wins a race, it's like a bigger deal than if I had won it. And like, looking back, I obviously wish I'd actually officially won on the day, but I think I've gotten a lot more notoriety, and like a lot more people know who I am because I was second that day. So it's hard to like say what would have been better for me in the long run. But honestly, I'm glad not glad that it happened, but I'm glad this affected me so early in my career that I like am now like aware of it. Because prior to the race, I wouldn't have never assumed like that I would have been pushed up you go into every race thinking like everyone's like competing fairly and everyone's like doing everything they can to like run a good race, and you don't want to go in like suspecting people at all. And this next year it was this 2020 or 2021 15K, it was really cool to go and like actually like know pretty much everyone in the race, thinking like, okay, this one is a legit race and I'm gonna try to win this one. So it was, I don't know, it was a lot of like mixed feelings, and like just kind of like in the end I ended up being just kind of like, oh well, it happened like several months ago, what are you gonna do about it, moving on.
Yeah, it sounds like obviously not the sort of when you imagine winning a big race for much of your life, it's not the scenario that you envision, but I guess there's a silver lining that you've kind of found in the experience that seems like good perspective. So we've kind of alluded to this a little bit, but I'd like to touch on what a weird year it's been for everybody, and then professional runners included. And Katy, maybe I'll start with you, because I know you were dealing with some injuries earlier in the year and hoping to work up to races later in the year, and a lot of the races went away. What is been like as an elite athlete getting back from injury training during a global pandemic been like?
Challenging. I think anyone on here could say that training this year and running this year has been a little challenging. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of had a year, not, yeah, I've kind of had a challenging, I don't know, just a year of injury and kind of on that financial aspect of like, I thought it would be one of those years, you know, where I'd be able to kind of rake in rake in the cash. But no, just one of those years that I thought I'd be able to crack down on those performances that I was hoping for, you know, last fall, and not being able to do that. So it's kind of been a year of like going back to that initial juggle of like, is this like gonna work out? Like, I don't know, like how much do you keep gambling on it? So I had a tough time in 2020. So I'm very glad that races have come back and things seem to be normalizing. And yeah, I don't know. I do really well with community and being able to run with a lot of people and run groups. And so, yeah, I had a rough go.
You know, again, I keep talking about, I'm sure that all of us on the call can maybe not to sort of the extent of having our source of income shut down as dramatically as it was for with prize races, but I think, you know, it's humanizing to hear that even top athletes have sort of a similar feeling about what we all just went through. Do you get a sense from your teammates too that like the maybe just the broader impact of not having races with prize money is what the impact has been on the on elite runners and professional runners?
For our team, I know it's been really hard because we generally have been one of the longer standing teams with a lot of generally financial back support with like gym membership and some medical personnel that we're able to access for free pro bono. And so this has kind of been a year where that's been falling through. So I think that's been really tough for our teammates too, because now, you know, they're kind of scrapping for cash and it's becoming more of a juggle of like, do I buy a gym membership now, or do I try to create a home gym, or, you know, so it's been tough for our team. And just kind of who I've talked to, it seems like some people are really motivated by, you know, they have this whole year where they can really, you know, just dive in and really be productive with it. And then, you know, some athletes, you know, have a harder time with that and it's more of a shutdown and like, hey, I'm just going to take time to reset. So I've seen a whole spectrum from my perspective.
Yeah, again, kind of I think mirrors society at large. Frank, I'm going to pose the same question to you, just kind of what this year's been like, and then I guess your observations about the larger elite and professional running community. And then I will ask if there are any chat questions, fire them off, because we are kind of coming up against time with our panel. So Frank, I'll pose that to you. Encourage the audience to type any questions into the chat for the runners if you have them. And then we'll move on to the next portion of this presentation.
Yeah, so the biggest change for me was like not running in groups anymore. We didn't, in like probably early April when everything kind of started up, we stopped meeting as a team, and now we really only meet for practice, and it's not even the whole team. It's like a couple times a week, and like 4 or 5 people come to the workout, depending on like what we're doing. But outside of that, I think I've really taken this year to kind of like see it as like, this is my chance to catch up to someone who can like qualify for the Olympics and not like somebody who can get in the Olympic trials. So I've been really motivated this year, and although like the races haven't been as frequent, they've been like every now and then you see something pop up and you're like, oh sweet, and you can like just jump into the race real quick kind of thing. But my job is remote, and it was before the pandemic started. I think a big difference now is that my girlfriend works from home now too, so it's I have a lot more company throughout the day, which has been nice. But
another thing all of us on the call can relate to in some degree, I think.
Yeah. I think something that might be harder than the pandemic itself in terms will be the change back to normalcy for a lot of people, where like now you have to like start doing stuff, start commuting and like going places. And like, I think a lot of people have like gotten to a rhythm of like, this is what life is now and it's feasible. And I work at Strava, and like we've realized that we don't really even need to have the offices anymore because we're like just as productive at home. So it's like it's kind of a coin flip as to what's going to happen next. But yeah, it's been some things have been good, some things have been bad, but you kind of work with the hand that you're dealt.
Makes sense. So a couple questions, and Aliphine, I think there's probably a natural answer, but I'm going to ask this one for you to start, which is, what are you looking forward to in 2021?
Well, I'm looking forward to getting in shape. I showed you guys my daughter earlier. She's only 3 months old, and she's a product of a 2020, happening. So when everything shut down after the Olympic trials, and we noticed that nothing else was going to happen for the rest of 2020, it was very hard for me to stay focused, and it felt like 2021 was really far away. And so we decided to have a child. And so I'm only 3 months postpartum, and I have the Olympics in less than 4 months. So I'm looking forward to getting in shape and definitely going to the Olympics and hopefully doing really, really well. I don't think there's ever been anyone who had a child between the Olympic trials and the Olympics. So this is kind of a trial. But I also believe in myself, and things are coming together very nicely right now in terms of training. I'm very slow, but I know and I believe that for the next 3 months, I'm going to be where I'm going to get the fitness that I need to have. So I'm really looking forward to going to Tokyo. And I think everybody's looking forward to that too, just because it's like, it will be the biggest event in terms of, like, for example, like marathons right now, everything is in the fall, and we have races, but they're very small. So I think that the Olympics will be that light at the end of the tunnel that will hopefully open up the world to racing in person again. At least that's the hope.
I certainly hope so. And then maybe we'll wrap with this one, and anyone on the panel can jump in. Do any of you have a runner that you particularly admire? Who would you say is your running hero, or someone that you sort of, I don't know, idolize but look up to in the sport?
I'll jump in. I think one person that really stands out to me is Frank Shorter, from like not only his I see you, Mitchell. Not only his running
the data, the guy that asked the question. So yeah.
Not only the running accomplishments from like just like being in Boulder, I didn't realize how much he had like done for the community, and like all the races he's organized and like fundraisers that has been like come about from him. Like I always there's a statue at CU that's of Frank Shorter, like running like right next to the bike path, and I never understood why it was there. This is CU. He didn't even go here. But like realizing how like much of an impact he had in the Boulder community, which is just like a really close knit community of runners. Like anywhere you go, you like see people you recognize. I think he's kind of like someone that I like always have in the back of my mind as like, that's somebody that anyone, whether you're a runner or not, you should try to aspire to be like.
Awesome. So I can't thank the panel enough. This is super helpful, and I think wonderful context. And you are all so sort of open and honest in sharing your stories and what the realities of being a professional runner. So with your information and openness in mind, I want to turn this over to Don Cardon, who is the organizer of an event that is going to benefit the support programs that we've mentioned here that have been instrumental in helping Katy and Frank and Aliphine remain in the sport and obtain professional success.
Okay. So we are working on an event called Cascade Runoff Redux. And the Cascade Runoff was the first prize money race that was widely supported by the athletes. And at the time, it was when road races had first started to grow and become kind of major factors in the American scene and within the sport. And we had, those of us who were competing had a lot of the same challenges you've been describing here in trying to pursue the sport after graduation from college. But we had one additional impediment, and that was amateur regulations. So not only where we're struggling to find money, but where we might have been able to have been either run for prize money or gotten shoe or clothing contracts. Those were illegal under amateur rules. And the only reason that we put up with it at the time was because the only way you could get to the Olympics was by being an amateur. And so you'd sort of suck it up and say, okay, I'll figure out some other way to stay alive rather than making money through the sport, and try to make it to the Olympics. And then in 1980, if you know your history, that's when we had the Olympic boycott. And all the athletes that I competed against at the time were furious. Here they had kind of been waiting for, you know, the Olympics as the plum that they were shooting for, if you can shoot for a plum. And, and all of a sudden it was gone just because the president had a political problem that he wanted to speak out about, and he laid that on the athletes. So that really kind of, there had been some talk before that about trying to get prize money and other sorts of professional money in the sport. But when that happened, it really propelled things forward. And to make a long story short, in 1981, the Cascade Runoff in Portland, Oregon, was the first prize money race that was widely supported by the elite athletes of that day. And it was a direct challenge to the governing bodies, to the predecessor of USA Track and Field, which was the Athletics Congress, and to the Olympic Committee. And the athletes that kind of took a stand that day said, we're going to do this and risk our amateur standing because we believe that we ought to be able to make money. And so that event, the Cascade Runoff, was a watershed event in the history of the sport. And as that anniversary was coming up here, it'll be 40 years this June, some of us who were involved put our heads together. Keith Peters was probably the main instigator. He was the race coordinator of the Cascade Runoff back in 1981. And Chuck Galford, who was the race director, and myself, I was at the time, the president of the Association of Road Racing Athletes. And we put our heads together and said, how do we, let's you know, not let all this sort of disappear into ancient history. Can we get a 30 for 30 on it, or can we get some podcasts about it? But what we really came down to, at least initially, is an event which I just mentioned, the Cascade Runoff Redux. It's going to be a virtual event, and it will have will be up and running in either by the end of this week or first part of next week. And we said, we know that it's still tough for athletes who are post-collegians to stay in the sport. So can we make this a fundraiser for the Road Scholar program, Run Camp, and the programs that the RRCA has initiated to help post-collegiate runners? So for a $40 entry fee, you're going to get a really cool shirt. It was one of the most unusual race t-shirts I've ever seen. There's some amazing artists in Portland. There were then, and there still are. And they came up with just a very cool shirt. Every year it was good, but that was one that we remember. So you'll get a rendition of that shirt, but also for the $40 entry fee, we're going to give $20 of each entry fee to the RRCA for their Road Scholar and Run Camp programs. So we're hoping that word gets out about this. And I know that we're kind of moving away from the virtual running world into the in-person world again, which is great. But we hope that, you know, this will be one of the virtual events that gets so many people signed up, maybe because they want to remember about the Cascade Runoff back in 1981, maybe because they've heard about it and would like to connect to it in some way, or maybe because they want to get a cool shirt, or maybe because they want to help the RCA with these post-collegiate programs. Well, we hope that there are going to be, hundreds and thousands of people who will sign up for this and generate quite a bit of funds for the RRCA's programs. Now we're not quite there yet. We'll have our website up, like I said, probably by the end of this week, first of next week. And the RRCA will be promoting this through their clubs and encouraging people to sign up for virtual cascade runoff redux. And I don't know how many we'll get. I don't know how much money we'll raise, but I hope it's just a ton, because we know that it's still tight for runners coming out of college. You never know whether, as we've been hearing, am I going to get an injury right when I thought I was going to be hitting my peak? When the Rhodes Scholar program was started, on one hand, we're saying, well, gosh, $5,000 is not a lot of money, but it makes a difference. And I heard all three of the athletes here say the same thing. It's if nothing else, even if you didn't get the money, it tells you that somebody cares about your wanting to be a professional runner, post-collegiate top runner. And that means something, as well as the money that also can help bridge a few gaps there. So we're, like I say, we're hopeful that this is going to be a big success. And we hope that the RRCA will promote it through their clubs, and that athletes will encourage people through their social media, and that in the end, we'll have a big check to give to the RRCA.
Thanks so much, Don. Like Don said, we will be sure to promote this event once the organizers are ready for it to go. We hope that you'll spread the word when that's the case. Those of you that have been on the call tonight and have heard the impact of what this kind of financial support can mean for a lot of runners and the future of American distance running, in a sense. So again, we'll make sure to have that information available to you as soon as it's to us from the runners. And we're really excited and grateful to the partnership and the race directors of the Cascade Runoff Redux for thinking of us and this program.
Yeah. Sorry, Andy. So we put together kind of a little history of that whole effort to open up the sport to professional running, which will be on our website, along with some, I think, pretty fun memories that Anna Dane, who was the winner of the 1981 Cascade Runoff, went on to a great professional career. And Greg Meyer, who won the men's section of the race and had a good career as a professional runner, and Benji Durden, who kind of came off that race and went to a number of big marathons and that were prize money marathons and had a pretty good career about it. So it's kind of fun. I think if nothing else, if you look at that and you're interested in the history, it's there. If you're interested in hearing what some of those runners have to say about being in our sport so many times, just trying to find how do we get the media interested. And I can tell you that the press conference on the evening before the Cascade Runoff in 1981 was the most intense press conference I've ever been to. There were media from not just the running magazines, but the national magazines like Sports Illustrated and the news magazines, and it was really intense because it was a battle that had come to a head. And then actually, interestingly, the next day, the Cascade Runoff was a great race, just an amazing race when everybody had been I guess, wound up in the politics of it. To actually have a great race to finish it off was pretty special. So yeah, I think it'll be fun to kind of look at some of those athletes had to say about those days.
Excellent, thank you. So I think that'll do it for this this event this evening. I should say Don was the RRCA president when the Rhodes Scholar Program began. So he's got a long history with both this event and our support of elite runners. So fitting that he's involved in this effort to help raise some funds. So thank you so much to Katy and Frank and Aliphine for joining us tonight and sharing your stories. Tremendously appreciated. Again, your openness and frankness, I think really gave people a understanding why we do this and hopefully encourages them to sign up for this event. So take care, everyone. Have a good evening and see you on the roads.